The restaurant lighting felt too bright. Every detail seemed sharper than it should be. The clink of silverware against plates. The murmur of conversations from other tables. The way my husband's family sat around me in a careful semicircle, like hunters who'd cornered their prey. I'd graduated 3 hours ago. Bachelor's degree in computer science, summa cum laude. 4 years of late nights, sacrifice, and determination. I'd worked full-time while studying, managed a household, and still graduated at the top of my class. My husband had promised we'd celebrate tonight. He'd chosen this upscale restaurant, insisted I wear my best dress. I'd believed this dinner meant something. The waiter had just cleared our appetizer plates when my husband reached into his jacket pocket. My stomach tightened. For one foolish moment, I thought maybe he'd gotten me a gift after all. Something to acknowledge what I'd accomplished. Something that said he saw me. He pulled out an envelope. Cream-colored, legal-sized. My name written across the front in his mother's handwriting, not his. "What's this?" I asked, though something in my chest already knew. "Open it," his mother said from across the table. Her smile was thin, satisfied. Next to her, my sister-in-law held up her phone, camera pointed directly at me. The little red recording light blinked. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. The paper inside was thick, official. Divorce petition, the header read. I scanned the lines, my vision blurring slightly. Irreconcilable differences. Division of assets. The apartment we lived in, his name only. The car I drove to work every day, his name only. The savings account I'd contributed to for 3 years, his name only. I would get nothing. Not even the furniture I'd picked out, paid for with my earnings. According to these papers, I would walk away from this marriage with exactly what I'd brought into it. Which, after 4 years of giving everything to build our life together, meant almost nothing. "We thought graduation was the perfect time," my husband said. His voice carried no emotion, like he was discussing a business transaction. "Clean break. You've got your degree now. You can take care of yourself. You've been living off our family's generosity long enough," his mother added. She sipped her wine, casual, comfortable. "This way you can start fresh. No obligations." The sister-in-law zoomed in with her phone. I could see my reflection in a knife on the table. My face looked strange. Well, distant. Like I was watching this happen to someone else. They wanted a reaction. Tears probably. Anger. Begging. Something they could laugh about later, share with their friends, replay whenever they needed entertainment. The video would be proof of their power. Look what we did to her. Look how we broke her. I thought about the letter hidden in my purse. The one that had arrived 2 weeks ago, before I'd even walked across that graduation stage. The offer letter from Sterling Global Technologies. Senior associate position. Salary higher than anything I'd dared dream about. Start date in 1 week. I told no one. Not my husband. Not his family. Some instinct had whispered to keep it secret, to wait. Now I understood why. I picked up the pen his mother had thoughtfully placed beside the documents. My hand was steady as I signed my name on every line that required it. The scratch of pen on paper seemed loud in the sudden silence. They'd expected protest. Instead, I gave them efficiency. "Taylor, don't you want to read it more carefully?" my husband asked. Uncertainty crept into his voice. This wasn't going according to script. "I read enough," I said. My voice came out calm, flat. I gathered the papers into a neat stack and pushed them across the table toward him. "Is there anything else?" His mother's smile faltered. The sister-in-law lowered her phone slightly, confused. I stood, smoothing down the blue dress I'd worn to make them happy. "Thank you for dinner. And for clarifying everything so completely." "That's it?" the sister-in-law said. "You're just going to leave?" I looked at each of them in turn. Really looked. Saw them clearly for perhaps the first time. The meanness in their eyes. The satisfaction they'd expected to feed on. The emptiness inside them that required humiliating others to feel full. "Yes," I said simply. "That's it." I walked out of that restaurant with my head up. Behind me, I heard confused murmuring, the scrape of chairs, someone calling my name. I didn't turn around. The night air outside felt clean, cool against my flushed cheeks. My phone buzzed in my purse. Rochelle, my best friend, checking in on the dinner. "How's the celebration going?" She texted. I stood on the sidewalk, city lights reflecting off nearby windows. People passed by, living their own lives, carrying their own stories. None of them knew that my entire world had just shifted. I texted back, "It's over. All of it. I'll explain tomorrow." Then I called a car service and went home. Not to the apartment I'd shared with him. That was already gone, already belonging to someone who saw me as disposable. Instead, I went to the extended stay hotel I'd secretly booked 3 days ago, when something in my gut told me to prepare for the worst. The room was small but clean. Generic art on the walls. A bed that was mine alone. I set my graduation cap on the desk, still decorated with the gold tassel I'd moved from right to left just hours ago. Then I pulled out the letter from Sterling Global Technologies and read it again. Every word a promise. Every sentence a doorway to somewhere new. I didn't cry. Tears would come later, maybe when the shock wore off. But right now I felt something else entirely. Relief. The marriage had been dying for longer than I'd admitted. The past year especially I'd felt invisible. My accomplishments dismissed. My dreams treated as inconveniences. I'd stayed because I'd believed in commitment, in working through difficulties, in the vows we'd made. But they'd done me a favor tonight. They'd cut the chains themselves. Handed me freedom wrapped in legal documents. Thought they were destroying me when actually they were setting me free. I changed out of the dress, folding it carefully. Tomorrow I'd donate it. Tonight I just needed it out of sight. I pulled on comfortable clothes and sat by the window watching the city lights. 1 week until my new job started. 7 days to find an apartment, move my belongings, and begin again. It seemed impossible. It seemed necessary. My phone rang. My husband. I declined the call. He tried again. Declined. A text appeared. We need to talk about this properly. I blocked the number. Then blocked his mother. His sister. Every Bennett family member in my contacts. Their numbers disappeared one by one until my phone was clean of them. Rochelle called. Her voice was gentle when I answered. What happened? They gave me divorce papers at dinner. Filmed my reaction. Expected me to fall apart. Oh honey. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm fine. I'm actually better than fine. I surprised myself by meaning it. I got that job, Rochelle. The one I applied for. They want me. The tech company? Taylor, that's amazing. I start next week. I need to find a place to live, move out of the apartment, get set up. Can you help me this weekend? Of course. Whatever you need. She paused. You sound different. Stronger. I feel different, I admitted. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long and someone just took it off my shoulders. They meant to hurt me, but they freed me instead. We talked for an hour, making plans, discussing logistics. When we hung up, I felt less alone. I had one true friend. I had a degree I'd earned through blood and sweat. I had a job opportunity most people would envy. I had myself. The Bennetts had nothing I needed anymore. I set an alarm for early morning and climbed into bed. Through the window, stars were barely visible past the city glow. I thought about trajectories, about how objects in motion stay in motion until acted upon by outside forces. They thought they'd stop me tonight. They had no idea they'd just launched me forward into something better. Sleep came easier than expected. In my dreams, I walked through doors that opened into rooms filled with light and possibility. Behind me, other doors closed and locked. I didn't look back to see who was knocking. Morning sunlight cut through the hotel curtains too early. I'd slept 6 hours but woke feeling oddly energized, like my body understood before my mind did that everything had changed. No more waking up in that apartment, wondering if today would be the day things got better. No more pretending I didn't notice the cold silences or dismissive glances. I made coffee in the small machine provided by the hotel. It tasted bitter but I drank it anyway, staring at my phone. 17 missed calls. 23 text messages. All from Bennett family numbers I'd blocked, now showing up as unknown. I deleted them without reading. Their words couldn't change what had already been decided. Rochelle arrived at 9 with boxes, tape, and determination written across her face. She hugged me hard in the hotel doorway. You ready for this? She asked. More than ready. We drove to the apartment I'd called home for 3 years. My key still worked. Inside, everything looked the same but felt different. The couch I'd saved up to buy. The curtains I'd hung. The little plant on the windowsill that I'd kept alive through 2 winters. All of it suddenly belonging to my past. My husband wasn't there. His mother had texted, among the messages I deleted, that he was staying with them to give me space to collect my things. How generous. How calculated. They probably assumed I'd take days, crying over memories, changing my mind. I gave myself 3 hours. Rochelle worked beside me without unnecessary questions. We boxed up my clothes, my books, my personal items. I left behind anything we'd purchased together. The kitchen gadgets, the decorative pieces, the shared things that had no clear owner. Let them have it all. I wanted nothing that would make me remember. In the bedroom closet I found my old laptop. The one I'd used before we got married, Before he'd insisted I use the newer one he'd bought. I packed it carefully. On a shelf above, tucked behind winter sweaters, I discovered a box of photographs from my childhood. My grandmother smiling. My parents before they passed. Younger versions of myself who'd had different dreams. I held one photo longer than the others. Me at 18, high school graduation, eyes bright with hope. I barely recognized her. Taking those? Rochelle asked gently. Yes. I need to remember who I was before. We loaded everything into her car. 2 trips, and my entire life fit into a dozen boxes and 3 suitcases. It should have felt sad. Instead, it felt freeing. Lighter. I did one final walkthrough. Made sure I hadn't left anything important. In the bathroom, my toothbrush still sat in the holder next to his. I threw it in the trash. In the living room, a framed photo of our wedding day hung on the wall. I took it down, removed my grandmother's picture frame, and left his photo on the counter. The frame went into my box. The photo stayed behind. I placed my key on the kitchen table. Centered it precisely. Then I walked out and closed the door for the last time. Didn't lock it. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. At the apartment complex office, I explained the situation to the manager. Showed her the divorce papers I'd kept copies of. Removed my name from the lease. She was sympathetic but professional. These things happened all the time in her world. Good luck to you, she said as I left. You seem like you're handling this well. Thank you. I'm trying. Rochelle drove us to 3 apartment viewings I'd scheduled yesterday. The first was too dark. The second had thin walls. The third was perfect. A studio in a decent neighborhood. Small kitchen, good water pressure, windows that faced east for morning light. Close to the train line that would take me downtown to my new job. I'll take it, I told the landlord. When can I move in? 1st of next month. 3 days from now. Perfect. I filled out the application, provided references that didn't include anyone named Bennett, and wrote the check for first month plus security deposit. Money I'd been secretly saving in an account my husband didn't know about. Small amounts taken from my paychecks over the past 6 months. I told myself it was emergency money. Turned out I was right. We stored my boxes in Rochelle's garage and went to lunch at a small diner. She ordered us both comfort food. Burgers and fries that tasted better than anything I'd eaten in months. So, she said carefully, how are you really doing? Like actually? I thought about it. Checked inside myself for the grief I expected to find. The mourning for a marriage ended. Instead, I found something closer to resolve. I'm angry, I admitted. Not at the divorce itself. At how they did it. Making a show of it. Filming it. Trying to humiliate me. That was cruel. It was. And it showed me exactly who they are. I can't be hurt by losing someone who never really valued me. That's very mature of you. I don't feel mature. I feel like I wasted years trying to make something work that was broken from the start. But I'm not going to waste more time looking back. I have 1 week to get my life together before I start a job that could change everything. Rochelle smiled. Look at you. Divorce papers on Friday, new career on Monday. Next Monday. I have days between. But yes. What about them? What if they keep trying to contact you? They have nothing I want. No property we share. No kids. No ties except legal ones being dissolved. They can try to reach me all they want. I'm not responding. What if they show up? Then I'll handle it. Calmly. The way I did at dinner. I won't give them the reaction they want. We finished lunch and spent the afternoon shopping. I needed basics for my new place. Sheets, towels, kitchen supplies. Everything I'd left behind I'd replace. Better versions. Chosen by me for me. At Target I picked out a bedding set in deep green. Towels and cream. A coffee maker that was mine alone. You're building a whole new life, Rochelle observed as we loaded purchases into her car. I am. And I'm only including things that make me happy. That evening we returned to her place. Her husband grilled dinner while their kids played in the yard. Normal family chaos. The kind I'd thought I was building toward. Now I realized that version of the future had been an illusion. The Bennetts had never intended to include me in any real way. I'd been temporary to them from the start. You're quiet, Rochelle's husband noted as we ate. Just thinking. Processing. You're welcome to stay here until your apartment is ready, he offered. We have the guest room. Thank you, but I'm okay at the hotel. I need the space to think. Back at the hotel that night, I opened my laptop. Created a new email address with no connection to my married name. Updated my resume with my graduation achievement. Researched Sterling Global Technologies thoroughly. Read every article about their recent projects, their company culture, their leadership team. I found the bio for the CEO. A woman. That felt significant somehow. Her name was Adrienne Cole. Built the company from startup to industry leader in 15 years. Known for innovation and for promoting talented people regardless of pedigree. In interviews, she talked about giving chances to those who prove themselves through work, not connections. I could prove myself through work. That was all I'd ever wanted. A fair chance to show what I could do. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I blocked it. Another unknown number. Blocked. They were determined I'd give them that. But I was more determined. Silence was my answer. Absence was my response. They would get nothing from me. Not anger, not sadness, not engagement. Just a clean void where I used to be. I thought about my grandmother who'd raised me after my parents died. She'd been strong in a quiet way. Never raised her voice, never made scenes. But she'd been unshakable in her principles. When people treated her poorly, she simply removed herself from their presence. No drama, no explanations. Just dignified distance. I'd inherited that from her. The ability to walk away from what doesn't serve me. To hold my peace when others expect chaos. The Bennetts had given me papers meant to destroy me. Instead, they'd given me permission to leave without guilt. They'd cut the ties themselves, then handed me the loose ends. They thought they were punishing me. They had no idea they'd set me free. I fell asleep planning my first day at Sterling Global Technologies. What I'd wear. How I'd introduce myself. The impression I wanted to make. Not someone broken or bitter. Someone capable, professional, ready to contribute. They'd filmed my lowest moment, expecting to capture my destruction. They had no idea I was just getting started. And this time I'd be writing my own ending. Monday morning arrived with unexpected clarity. I woke before my alarm in the new apartment, sunlight streaming through curtains I'd hung myself. The space smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Everything here was mine. Chosen by me. Built by me. No shared history, no compromises I hadn't wanted to make. I dressed carefully. Navy suit I'd bought on Saturday. Blue blouse underneath. Professional but not trying too hard. My natural hair in a sleek bun. Minimal jewelry. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked focused, determined, ready. Sterling Global Technologies occupied 15 floors of a downtown building. Glass and steel reflecting morning clouds. I arrived 30 minutes early, checked in at security, and rode the elevator to the 12th floor. My hands were steady. My breathing calm. The reception area was modern, efficient. A woman at the desk smiled warmly. You must be Taylor Bennett. Welcome. Adrienne wanted to meet you first thing. She's excited you're here. The CEO wanted to meet me. First day. That was unusual. I followed the receptionist down a hall lined with photos of company milestones. Awards won, products launched, teams celebrating. In every photo, people looked genuinely happy. Not the forced corporate smiles I'd seen at other companies during my internships. Real pride in their work. Adrienne Cole's office door was open. She stood when I entered, extending her hand. Late 40s, sharp eyes that missed nothing, suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe. But her handshake was warm, genuine. Taylor, thank you for starting with us. Your thesis work on data security protocols caught our attention. We need people who think creatively about problems. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm ready to contribute however I can. I like that. No false modesty. You know you're good. She gestured for me to sit. Here's what I believe. Talent comes from everywhere. But not everyone gets equal chances to prove themselves. So when I see potential, I invest in it. Your work speaks for itself. Now let's see what you can do with resources and support. We talked for 20 minutes. She outlined my initial projects, introduced me to my team lead through video call, explained the company's philosophy. No corporate buzzwords. Just clear expectations and genuine enthusiasm for innovation. One more thing, she said as I stood to leave. You'll hear people say you got this position because we needed diversity. Let them talk. You're here because you earned it. Remember that. Especially on hard days. I nodded, throat tight with unexpected emotion. No one had ever been that direct, that supportive. I will. My team was small. 5 people including me. They welcomed me without the suspicion I'd feared. Showed me my workspace, explained ongoing projects, included me in conversations like I'd been there all along. By lunch, I'd contributed 3 ideas that made my supervisor nod thoughtfully. You're going to fit in well here, he said. I can tell. I worked through lunch, too focused to stop. The problems in front of me were complex, engaging, required the kind of deep thinking I'd craved in school. Around 3, someone brought me coffee. Around 5, they reminded me I could go home. I stayed until 7. Walking out of that building, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Like I was exactly where I needed to be, doing what I was meant to do. My phone had stayed silent all day. The Bennetts had finally gotten the message, or they'd gotten tired of trying. Either way, the silence was peaceful. I rode the train home, picked up groceries, cooked dinner in my tiny kitchen. Simple pasta. But it tasted perfect because I'd made it for myself, in my own space, after a day spent building something meaningful. Rochelle called while I was washing dishes. How was day 1? Better than I imagined. The CEO met with me personally. My team is solid. The work is challenging. Look at you. Less than a week ago you were getting divorce papers. Now you're thriving. I'm trying. Some moments are harder than others. But I'm moving forward. That's all you can do. We talked about her day, her kids, normal life things that felt grounding. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. Found the video his sister had filmed. She'd posted it somewhere, probably. Shared it with friends. But I couldn't find it online. Maybe she deleted it. Maybe it had gotten less attention than expected. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. That moment had passed. That version of me sitting in that restaurant had transformed into someone new. Someone they no longer had access to. I spent the evening reading documentation for tomorrow's projects. Learning the systems, understanding the architecture. At 10, I closed the laptop and got ready for bed. The apartment was quiet in a good way. Peaceful, not lonely. As I turned off the light, I thought about the path that had led here. The marriage that had crumbled. The family that had tried to humiliate me. The degree I'd earned despite it all. Every difficult piece had been necessary. Every struggle had built something in me that I needed now. They'd wanted to break me. Instead, they'd forged me into something stronger. And I was just getting started. 6 months passed like pages turning. Autumn shifted into winter. Trees outside my apartment window went bare, then occasional snow covered them like lace. Through it all, I worked. Sterling Global Technologies became my entire focus. I arrived early, stayed late. Not because anyone forced me, but because the work demanded my best and I wanted to give it. My first project involved restructuring our data security framework. I found vulnerabilities no one had noticed, proposed solutions that saved the company significant risk. Adrienne noticed. She always noticed. By December, I'd been promoted to project lead. My own team now. 3 brilliant people who respected my vision and pushed me to think bigger. You're making quite an impression, my supervisor told me during my review. 2 promotions in 6 months. That's rare here. I'm just doing the work that needs doing. You're doing more than that. You're innovating. Keep it up. I moved to a better apartment in January. 1 bedroom, actual closet space, a kitchen where I could cook real meals. Still modest, but entirely mine. I furnished it slowly, deliberately. Each piece chosen with care. A comfortable chair for reading. A desk that faced the window. Plants that added life to the space. Nothing excessive. Everything meaningful. Rochelle visited often, sometimes with her family. We'd cook together, her kids would tell me about school, and I'd feel connected to something beyond work. She never pushed me to date or move on romantically. She understood I was focused elsewhere. You seem content, she observed one Saturday while we prepped vegetables. I am. For the first time in years, I'm building something that's completely mine. No compromises. No one undermining me. Just me and my work. What about everything else? Don't you want someone? Eventually, maybe. But right now, I want to prove something to myself. That I can stand alone. That I don't need someone else to validate my worth. She nodded, understanding. You're doing that. You know that, right? I'm starting to believe it. Work consumed most of my energy, but in good ways. I joined professional organizations. Attended conferences. Networked with people who valued expertise over connections. My name started appearing in industry publications. Small mentions at first. Then bylines on articles about innovative security approaches. I never posted on social media. No photos of my new life. No updates about my success. That part of my existence stayed private. Some colleagues found that unusual in an age of constant sharing. But I preferred the quiet. Let my work speak. Let results tell the story. In March, Sterling won a major government contract. My security protocols were part of what sealed the deal. Adrienne announced it at a company meeting, specifically crediting my contributions. People applauded. I nodded acknowledgement but felt uncomfortable with the attention. The work mattered more than the recognition. That night, alone in my apartment, I let myself feel proud. Not arrogant. Just quietly satisfied with what I'd built in 9 months. From divorce papers to this. From humiliation to respect. My phone rarely rang anymore except for work or Rochelle. I changed my number after the first month, kept it private. The Bennetts had no way to reach me. Sometimes I wondered if they'd tried. Mostly, I didn't think about them at all. But occasionally, late at night, I'd remember that restaurant. The smirking faces. The camera recording my reaction. The divorce papers sliding across the table. And I'd feel a cold satisfaction knowing they'd never see what I'd become. They'd frozen me in their minds at my lowest point. They had no idea who I was now. By April, I'd saved enough to make real investments. Started a retirement account. Put money into stocks. Built financial security I'd never had during my marriage. Every paycheck reminded me of my independence. My capability. My worth. The CEO called me into her office on a Tuesday. I have a proposition. We're launching a new division. Innovation and forward development. I want you to head it. Head it? I've only been here 9 months. And in 9 months you've proven yourself more than people who've been here 5 years. You think differently. You solve problems others don't see. That's what this division needs. Someone who won't just maintain. Someone who'll push boundaries. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Then go build something extraordinary. I said yes. Of course I said yes. This was everything I'd worked toward. Recognition based purely on merit. Opportunity given because I'd earned it. The promotion came with a significant raise. An office with my name on the door. A team I'd helped build. At 26 years old, I was managing major initiatives for a Fortune 500 company. People twice my age reported to me. Not because of who I knew. Because of what I could do. I called Rochelle from my new office. Remember when I was signing those divorce papers? When they thought they were ruining me? Of course. I wish they could see where I am now. Not because I need them to know. Just so they'd understand how wrong they were about me. They were wrong about everything. But you don't need their validation. I know. I just want them to understand that dismissing me was the biggest mistake they ever made. They probably already know. People like that always realize it eventually. When it's too late to matter. She was right. Whether the Bennetts knew or didn't know, acknowledged or ignored, none of it changed my reality. I'd built something real. Something lasting. Something entirely my own. That evening, I worked late in my new office. Through the window, city lights spread out like scattered stars. This view, this position, this life. All of it earned through my own effort. No one had given it to me. No one could take it away. The divorce papers had seemed like an ending. They'd been a beginning. The start of becoming who I was always meant to be. Strong, capable, independent. Successful on my own terms. And I was only getting started. The best parts were still ahead. I could feel it building, momentum carrying me toward something even bigger. Whatever came next, I'd face it the same way I'd faced everything else. With quiet determination and absolute focus. They'd wanted to see me broken. Instead, I'd become unbreakable. And that was the sweetest victory of all. Not revenge. Just success. Pure, undeniable, self-made success. I didn't seek news about the Bennetts. But information has a way of finding you when you're not looking for it. A mutual acquaintance mentioned something at a networking event. A former neighbor reached out on LinkedIn. Pieces of information that painted a picture I hadn't asked to see. The family business was struggling. Bad investments, market changes, and apparently poor management had taken their toll. The company that had once seemed so stable, so superior to anything I could achieve, was downsizing. Laying people off. Scrambling to stay relevant. I felt nothing hearing this. No satisfaction, no pity. Just the distant awareness you have when someone mentions weather in a city you no longer live in. Interesting perhaps, but irrelevant to your daily life. My ex-husband had lost his job 4 months ago. He'd been working for his family's company, which made the layoffs personal. Now he was searching, finding the market less welcoming than expected. His resume showed gaps. His skills had atrophied in a position where his last name mattered more than his performance. His mother had called my old number. Several times, according to the person who now had it. They'd eventually told her to stop calling, that I wasn't reachable there anymore. She tried finding me online. But I'd kept my professional presence separate from my personal information. No photos of my face on company websites. No social media to track. I'd become a ghost to them. The sister-in-law had deleted the video. I learned this through a comment someone made at a conference. Apparently, she'd posted it briefly, gotten less engagement than expected, and quietly removed it. Maybe guilt had caught up with her. Maybe she'd realized documenting cruelty wasn't as entertaining as she'd thought. Either way, the evidence of that night had vanished into the internet void. I was sitting in my office when Rochelle called one afternoon. "You're not going to believe this. I ran into them. At the grocery store. Your ex and his mother." "Okay," I said carefully. "How did that go?" "Awkward. They didn't see me at first. I overheard them talking. They were arguing about money. About how much everything costs now. His mother was saying something about how they should have handled things differently. Then they noticed me." "Did you talk to them?" "His mother tried. Asked if I'd heard from you. Said they'd been trying to reach you about something important. I told them I don't discuss my friends with people who hurt them. Then I walked away." "Thank you for that." "Taylor, they look bad. Not physically but in their energy. Defeated. Stressed. Whatever they're dealing with, it's taking a toll. I should have felt something. Vindication maybe. But instead, I felt the same careful neutrality I'd maintained for months. Their struggles weren't my concern. Their stress wasn't my problem. I'd moved so far past that part of my life that even their difficulties felt distant. "I hope they figure things out," I said. And I meant it. Not because I cared specifically about them, but because I didn't wish active harm on anyone. Their consequences were their own making. I didn't need to add to them. "You're more generous than they deserve." "I'm not generous. I'm indifferent." "There's a difference." That weekend, I attended an industry gala. Sterling was being honored for our innovation initiatives. Adrienne had insisted I come, though I tried to decline. "You were part of this. You should be there when we accept recognition for it." The event was formal. I wore a green dress, elegant but simple. Styled my hair in loose curls. Felt like an imposter among executives and founders. But Adrienne introduced me to people who mattered. Venture capitalists. Tech leaders. Decision makers who controlled billions in investments. "This is Taylor Bennett," she'd say. "Head of our innovation division. Brilliant mind." Watch for her name. People paid attention. Asked about my work. Wanted to know my background, my approach, my vision. I answered honestly, without false modesty but also without arrogance. Just clear statements about what I'd done and what I believed possible. A journalist approached me near the end of the evening. She worked for a tech industry magazine. "I'd love to interview you. We're doing a series on rising leaders. People making impact despite obstacles." "I don't usually do interviews." "I know. I've tried to research you. You're remarkably private. But that's exactly why your story matters. Success without self-promotion. Achievement through work alone." I hesitated. Then thought about visibility. About showing other people, especially women who looked like me, that paths existed beyond what seemed obvious. "Okay. But I want to focus on the work, not personal drama." "Absolutely. Though personal context sometimes helps people connect to the journey." We scheduled it for the following week. I left the gala feeling unsettled. I'd worked hard to stay invisible outside my professional circles. Now I was stepping into light, letting people see me. It felt vulnerable. Necessary but vulnerable. Rochelle met me for coffee the next day. I told her about the interview. "Are you sure about this? What if the Bennetts see it?" "Then they see it. I'm not hiding anymore. I did nothing wrong. If they learn I'm successful, that's their problem to process, not mine to prevent." You've come a long way. From signing those papers in silence to this. Silence was strategic then. It gave me space to build without interference. But maybe now it's time to be seen. On my terms. The interview happened in my office. The journalist was thorough, professional. She asked about my education, my approach to innovation, my leadership philosophy. Then gently she asked about obstacles I'd overcome. I told her the truth. Not names, not specific details. But the shape of it. Finishing my degree while others doubted me. Starting over alone. Building a career from nothing but determination and skill. Proving myself when others expected me to fail. That must have been difficult, she said softly. It was necessary. Difficult things often are. But they made me stronger. More focused. More certain of what I'm capable of. Do you ever wish you could show the people who doubted you what you've achieved? I considered this carefully. No. My success isn't about them. It's about me. About proving to myself that I could build something meaningful. Whether they know or don't know, it doesn't change what I've accomplished. The article published 3 weeks later. Front page of the magazine's digital edition. Photos of me in my office, looking confident and professional. Quotes about innovation, about creating opportunities, about merit-based success. My full name, my position, my achievements. all visible for anyone searching, including the Bennetts. I wondered if they'd see it. If they'd recognize my name, search for details, realize what I'd become. Part of me hoped they would. Not for revenge but for closure. So they'd know exactly what they'd dismissed, what they'd lost. But mostly, I hoped they'd see it and understand that I'd become someone they could no longer touch. Not with cruelty, not with doubt, not with any weapon they'd once used against me. I'd moved beyond their reach entirely. Built a life they had no access to. Succeeded in ways they'd never imagined I could. The interview brought opportunities. Speaking invitations. Job offers from competing companies. Calls from recruiters wanting to know my price. I declined most of them. I was exactly where I needed to be, building something meaningful at Sterling. But the visibility changed things. Made my success undeniable. Public. Permanent. Whatever the Bennetts were dealing with in their declining circumstances, they'd now know I was dealing with the opposite. Rising while they fell. Succeeding while they struggled. Not because I'd caused their problems, but because I'd focused on my own path rather than dwelling on their cruelty. That felt like justice. Quiet, clean, complete justice. The kind that doesn't require confrontation or revenge. Just two trajectories diverging. There's downward, mine ascending. Both sets of consequences earned through choices made. I'd chosen growth. They'd chosen cruelty. Now we were each living with the results. And I was finally, fully, entirely okay with that. The technology conference in Chicago was one of the industry's biggest events. 3,000 attendees, hundreds of presentations, networking opportunities that could reshape careers. Adrienne had encouraged me to submit a proposal to speak. Share what you're working on. The autonomous security protocols. People need to hear your approach. I'd submitted reluctantly. Public speaking still made me nervous despite my growing confidence in other areas. But they'd accepted my proposal. Gave me a prime slot on the second day. 30 minutes to present, 15 for questions. I prepared obsessively. Refined my slides until every element was clear, compelling, necessary. Practiced my delivery until it felt natural. This was my chance to contribute meaningfully to industry conversations. I wouldn't waste it. The presentation room was larger than expected. Seats for 200 people. I arrived early, tested the technology, adjusted the lighting. Attendees filtered in slowly, then faster. By start time, every seat was filled. People stood along the back wall. I hadn't expected this level of interest. I took a breath. Stepped up to the microphone. Good afternoon. I'm Taylor Bennett from Sterling Global Technologies. Today I want to talk about rethinking data security through predictive modeling and autonomous response systems. The next 30 minutes flowed smoothly. I explained our approach, showed real-world applications, walked through case studies demonstrating effectiveness. The audience stayed engaged. People took notes. No one checked their phones. When I finished, the applause was genuine, sustained. Question period brought thoughtful inquiries. Technical details, implementation challenges, scalability concerns. I answered each one directly, acknowledging limitations while defending our methodology. This was my element. Complex problems, clear solutions, intellectual rigor without pretense. After the formal Q&A ended, people approached with follow-up questions. Business cards exchanged. Conversations about collaboration. I was energized rather than drained. This felt right. Sharing knowledge, advancing the field, contributing something meaningful. A woman in her 40s waited until others had dispersed. Something in her expression seemed familiar, though I couldn't place it. That was excellent, she said. Really innovative thinking. I teach at Northwestern Business School. I'm going to use your framework in my strategy courses if you don't mind. Of course. That's why we share. I have to ask. She hesitated. Are you from here originally? Chicago area? No, I grew up in Ohio. Moved east for school then work. I thought maybe I knew your family. You remind me of someone. She smiled apologetically. Never mind. Old memories. We talked briefly about her courses, how she might incorporate our security model into business case studies. She handed me her card. Professor Amanda Chin, Northwestern University. If you're ever interested in guest lecturing, I'd love to have you. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you. The rest of the conference passed in a productive blur. More conversations, more connections, more validation that my work mattered beyond Sterling's walls. On the final day, I attended a panel discussion about women in technology leadership. The panelists discussed obstacles, strategies, the importance of mentorship. During the Q&A, someone in the audience stood. A man I didn't recognize. Question for the panel. Do you think companies sometimes promote people for diversity rather than merit? How do you respond when people question whether you really earned your position? The question hung in the air, loaded with implication. The moderator handled it diplomatically. The panelists gave measured responses about proving yourself through results, about how diversity and merit aren't mutually exclusive. But something in the question bothered me. The assumption behind it. The subtle accusation. I raised my hand. The moderator nodded at me. I want to add something if I may. I've heard that question before. The suggestion that if you're a woman or a person of color or both, your success must be suspect. Here's what I've learned. People who question your merit are usually people who've never had their own questioned. They've benefited from systems that favor them, so they assume everyone else is just gaming different systems. The truth is simpler. Merit shows up in results. If you're doing work that matters, delivering outcomes that move things forward, creating value that's measurable and real, then you earned your position. Period. Anyone who can't see that is revealing their own insecurities, not your inadequacies. The room erupted in applause. The panelists nodded agreement. The man who'd asked the question sat down looking uncomfortable. After the panel ended, several women approached me. Thank you for saying that. I needed to hear it. That evening, the conference hosted a closing reception. Cocktails and networking in a hotel ballroom. I almost skipped it, tired from 3 days of intensity. But Adrienne texted, "Go to the reception. Make connections. This is important for your career." So I went. Wore the same green dress from the earlier gala. Felt more comfortable in it now. Moved through the crowd with growing confidence. People recognized me from my presentation. Wanted to continue conversations started during the conference. I was talking with a group about implementation challenges when I noticed someone staring from across the room. A man mid-30s, well-dressed. He looked familiar in a way that made my stomach tighten. Then I placed him. Someone from the old neighborhood. Someone who'd been at gatherings with my ex-husband's family. Not close to them but connected. The kind of person who'd heard things, knew people, carried gossip. He approached, recognition clear on his face. "Taylor? Taylor Bennett?" "Yes." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Wow. I almost didn't recognize you. You look so different. So successful." He laughed awkwardly. "I mean, you always look nice. But this is another level. I heard you speak yesterday. The security presentation. That was you." "It was." "That's incredible. Really. I had no idea you were doing such high-level work. I mean, last I heard." He trailed off, realizing what he'd been about to say. "Last you heard what?" "Nothing. Just, things were different for you. That's all. But clearly you've done amazingly well. Congratulations." He excused himself quickly, uncomfortable. But the damage was done. Word would spread. Someone from the old circles knew where I was, what I'd achieved. The information would travel. Eventually, inevitably, it would reach the Bennetts. Part of me wanted to feel anxious about that. Wanted to worry about them reaching out, trying to reconnect, inserting themselves back into my life. But standing there in that ballroom, surrounded by professional peers who respected my work, I felt only calm certainty. Let them know. Let them see what I'd built. Let them understand exactly what they'd discarded. Not because I needed their acknowledgement, but because truth had value. They'd made assumptions about who I was, what I could achieve. Now they'd learn how wrong those assumptions had been. I finished my conversations at the reception. Collected final business cards. Made plans for follow-up meetings. Then I went back to my hotel room, packed my bags and prepared to return home. To my apartment, my city, my life. The one I'd built alone. The one that belonged entirely to me. The conference had been about more than presentations and networking. It had been about visibility. Stepping fully into my success. Letting my accomplishments speak publicly, clearly, undeniably. No more hiding. No more staying small to avoid attention. I'd spent months building in silence. Now it was time to let people see what I'd built. Including the people who tried to ensure I'd never build anything at all. Their opinion didn't matter. But their awareness did. Because knowing they knew, that felt like closing a circle. Finishing something that had started with divorce papers in a restaurant. They'd wanted to see me destroyed. Instead they'd see me thriving. That wasn't revenge. It was just reality. The inevitable result of my focus meeting their assumptions. I'd proven them wrong in the most complete way possible. By succeeding. By becoming someone they couldn't diminish, dismiss, or ignore. And I was just getting started. Whatever came next would be even bigger. Because I'd learned something crucial in these months of rebuilding. I was capable of far more than I'd imagined. The only limits that had ever held me were the ones I'd accepted from others. Now I accepted only my own. And those limits kept expanding. The Bennetts had given me divorce papers meant as an ending. They'd become the beginning of everything else. Everything better. Everything real. And soon they'd know it too. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, documentary opportunity. I almost deleted it as spam. Then I noticed the sender. A production company that created thoughtful pieces for streaming platforms. Their documentaries often won awards, focused on human interest stories told with depth and nuance. Dear Ms. Bennett, we're developing a documentary series about women rebuilding their lives and careers after major setbacks. Your name came up repeatedly in our research. We'd love to discuss featuring your story. Your professional achievements combined with your approach to overcoming obstacles represents exactly what we're trying to highlight. I stared at the email for 10 minutes. This was different from a magazine article. More invasive. More permanent. A documentary would mean cameras, interviews, sharing details I'd kept private. The Bennetts would definitely see it. Everyone would. I called Rochelle during lunch. I need advice. A documentary company wants to feature me. That's amazing. What are you worried about? Everything. My privacy. Dredging up the past. Giving them ammunition. Oh, the Bennetts? Taylor, they already know you're successful. That guy from the conference saw to that. This isn't about them anymore. This is about you deciding how you want your story told. What if I don't want it told at all? Then say no. But think about why you might say yes. How many young women need to see someone who looks like them succeeding? How many people going through divorces need to see there's life after? Good life. Successful life. She was right. As usual. This wasn't about the Bennetts. It was about whether I wanted to use my experience to help others. Whether my story had value beyond my personal journey. I responded to the email. Set up a call. Talked with the producers about their vision, their approach, their commitment to respectful storytelling. They sent examples of their previous work. Thoughtful pieces that honored their subject's complexity without exploiting their pain. We want to show the journey, the lead producer explained. Not just the success, the hard parts, the rebuilding, but always with your agency intact. You'd have final approval on everything. We're not interested in trauma porn. We're interested in resilience. I agreed to a preliminary interview. They'd film it, assess whether my story fit their series, decide whether to move forward. No commitment yet. Just exploration. They came to Sterling the following week. Small crew, unobtrusive equipment. They filmed me working, leading meetings, collaborating with my team. Then we sat for the formal interview in a conference room with good natural light. The interviewer was gentle but direct. Tell me about the moment everything changed. I thought about which moment she meant. The divorce papers? Earlier? Later? Then I realized she meant the moment I decided to change. The moment I chose myself. I think it was signing those papers. Not the moment I received them. The moment I signed them. Because I realized I had a choice. I could fight for something broken or I could build something new. Fighting would have meant staying stuck. Signing meant moving forward. So I signed. I walked out. And I started over. That must have been terrifying. It was freeing. I'd spent so long trying to make myself smaller to fit into someone else's life. Their expectations, their limitations. When they rejected that version of me, I got to ask myself who I actually was. What I actually wanted. Turns out I wanted this. Meaningful work. Independence. Self-sufficiency. Not their approval. Do you think about them? The people who hurt you. Rarely. At first, I thought about them constantly. Imagined conversations where I proved them wrong. Fantasized about them regretting their choices. But over time they became less relevant. I got busy building. And when you're genuinely focused on creation, you don't have energy left for resentment. What would you say to someone going through something similar? I looked directly at the camera. Your value doesn't depend on anyone else recognizing it. People who dismiss you are showing you exactly who they are. Believe them. Then build anyway. Build something so solid, so real, so undeniably yours that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Not because you proved them wrong, but because you proved yourself right. The interview lasted 2 hours. They filmed me at my apartment, cooking dinner, reading. Normal life. Successful, independent, peaceful normal life. Nothing dramatic. Just contentment earned through hard work and deliberate choices. 2 weeks later, the producers called. We want to include you. Your story fits perfectly with what we're doing. You represent the series thesis. That setbacks can be setups. That endings can be beginnings. Are you comfortable moving forward? I thought about visibility, about vulnerability, about the Bennetts seeing this and knowing everything. Then I thought about younger versions of myself. Women trapped in situations they think they can't leave. People who've been told they're not good enough, smart enough, capable enough. If my story helped even one person choose themselves, it was worth the discomfort. Yes, let's do it. Production took 3 months. More interviews, more filming, more sharing details I'd kept private. They talked to Rochelle, who spoke about supporting me through the transition. They interviewed Adrienne, who discussed recognizing potential and investing in people. They filmed the innovation division team, capturing our dynamic and mutual respect. They never interviewed the Bennetts, never showed their faces or used their names. But the shape of what had happened was clear. The divorce presented as a gift, unwrapped to reveal freedom. The family who'd expected humiliation providing liberation instead. The documentary premiered on a Friday evening. 6 45-minute episodes. Mine featured in episode 3 titled Building After Breakdown. Rochelle came over to watch with me. We ordered takeout, sat on my couch and pressed play. Seeing myself on screen was strange. I looked confident, articulate, certain of my path. The editing was fair, respectful. They'd included difficult moments but framed them as growth opportunities rather than trauma. The overall tone was hopeful. Look what's possible when you choose yourself. My phone stayed silent that evening. I'd warned my colleagues it was airing but asked them not to make a big deal. At work Monday, several people mentioned watching it. You were great. Really inspiring. But no one made it awkward. Sterling's culture respected privacy while celebrating achievement. The documentary gained traction online. Articles about the series highlighted my episode. Comments from viewers who'd connected with my story. I needed to see this. I'm filing for divorce next week and was terrified. Now I'm hopeful. Messages like that made the vulnerability worthwhile. And yes, the Bennetts saw it. I know because the messages started. Not to me directly. I'd blocked every avenue of contact. But through mutual acquaintances who reached out. They saw the documentary. They're upset. They say you misrepresented what happened. I didn't respond to those messages. Didn't defend myself or engage. The documentary showed my truth. My experience. My path forward. Whether the Bennetts liked that truth was irrelevant. They'd had their chance to shape our story. They'd chosen cruelty. Now the consequences of that choice were public. But the best response wasn't mine. It came from viewers who didn't know any of us. Who watched objectively and drew their own conclusions. Online forums discussing the series praised my resilience. Criticized the family who treated me poorly. Celebrated my success as earned and deserved. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. And it wasn't in their favor. Not because I'd argued my case but because I'd simply told my truth. Let people see what happened and what I'd built afterward. The contrast spoke louder than any accusation could. 3 weeks after the documentary aired, I received a letter. Hand-delivered to Sterling's office. From a law firm. I opened it carefully, heart pounding. Inside was a cease and desist. The Bennetts demanding I stop making defamatory statements about them. Threatening legal action for damaging their reputation. I forwarded it to Sterling's legal team. They responded swiftly, professionally. Pointed out that I'd never used names, never made false statements, never did anything actionable. That the documentary was protected speech. That attempting to silence me would only generate more publicity they wouldn't like. The Bennetts backed down. No lawsuit. No further contact. Just the knowledge that they'd tried one more time to control me and failed. Their power over me had ended the night I signed those papers. Everything since then had been my story, my choices, my consequences to own. And I own them proudly. Every difficult decision. Every lonely night. Every moment of doubt overcome. All of it mine. Built by me. Unshakable because I'd laid every brick myself. They couldn't touch it. Couldn't diminish it. Couldn't take credit or cast shadows. I'd won without fighting. Succeeded without revenge. And that, I realized, was the truest victory possible. Not defeating them but making them irrelevant. Becoming someone they could neither hurt nor help. Someone complete without their approval or acknowledgement. The documentary became my public declaration of independence. My way of saying I survived, I thrived, and I did it without them. And now thousands of people knew it. Including them. Especially them. The nomination letter arrived in April. The National Technology Leadership Foundation wanted to honor me with their Emerging Innovator Award, recognizing professionals under 30 who'd made significant contributions to their field. The ceremony would be held in New York, broadcast live, attended by industry leaders from across the country. You have to accept, Adrienne insisted when I showed her the letter. This is huge, Taylor. People work their entire careers hoping for this recognition. It feels premature. I've only been in the field a few years, which makes it more impressive. Stop downplaying your achievements. You've earned this. Accept it. I accepted. Then spent weeks trying not to think about the ceremony, about standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people, about cameras broadcasting my face to viewers nationwide, about the inevitable reality that the Bennetts would be watching. Because they would watch. Of course they would. They'd seen the documentary. They knew what I'd become. This ceremony would cement it further. Public validation of everything they'd dismissed. The event was scheduled for a Saturday evening in mid-May. Rochelle insisted on coming with me. You need someone there who actually knows you, who can celebrate without agenda. We flew to New York on Friday. The foundation had booked rooms at a hotel near the venue. Everything first class. I kept expecting someone to realize there'd been a mistake, that I didn't belong in these spaces. But no one questioned my presence. I was invited, honored, respected. Saturday evening I dressed carefully. A dress in deep maroon, elegant but not overdone. Hair styled professionally but naturally. Minimal jewelry except my grandmother's earrings. She would have been proud of this moment. That thought steadied me. The venue was a historic theater in Manhattan. Outside, photographers captured arrivals. Inside, chandeliers cast warm light over attendees in formal wear. I felt out of place until Adrienne found me. She'd come to support me along with several sterling colleagues. You look perfect, she said. Confident but humble. Exactly right. The ceremony began at 7. Awards in various categories. Lifetime achievement. Research innovation. Industry impact. Mine was third to last. Emerging innovator. I sat through earlier presentations trying to calm my racing heart. Then the presenter called my name. Taylor Bennett. In just 18 months at Sterling Global Technologies, she's revolutionized how we think about autonomous security systems. Her predictive modeling approach has been adopted by organizations worldwide. She represents the future of technological leadership. Brilliant, driven, and committed to excellence. Please welcome Taylor Bennett. I walked to the stage on legs that felt uncertain. Accepted the crystal award that caught light as I held it. Stepped up to the microphone. The audience was massive. Cameras pointed at me from multiple angles. Red lights indicating live broadcast. I thought about the young woman signing divorce papers 2 years ago. The one who'd believed herself small, limited, barely capable. She seemed impossibly distant now. Thank you, I began. My voice was steady. This recognition means everything because it represents something I had to learn the hard way. That your worth isn't determined by who believes in you. It's determined by the work you do and the value you create. 2 years ago I was told I wasn't enough. Wasn't smart enough, accomplished enough, worthy enough. I could have believed that. Instead, I decided to prove it wrong. Not to them. To myself. This award isn't just about security systems or innovation. It's about what's possible when you refuse to accept other people's limitations. When you build despite doubt. When you focus on contribution instead of approval. So thank you for this honor. But more importantly, thank you for creating spaces where merit matters more than pedigree. Where work speaks louder than connections. That's the world I want to keep building. Together. The applause was sustained, genuine. I saw people standing. Adrienne was beaming. Rochelle had tears in her eyes. I'd spoken from truth, from experience, from the core of who I'd become. And it had resonated. Backstage afterward, journalists requested interviews. I gave a few, keeping responses focused on my work and vision. Then the foundation director approached. That speech was perfect, authentic and inspiring. We've already had tremendous response online. Your story is connecting with people. The reception that followed felt surreal. People I'd admired from a distance wanted to talk with me, ask questions, exchange ideas. I wasn't the least important person in the room anymore. I was recognized, valued, treated as a peer by people whose respect actually meant something. At one point I stepped outside for air. The New York evening was cool, clear. I could see stars despite the city lights. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that had somehow gotten through my blocks. Saw your award. Congratulations. You've done well. We were wrong about you. My ex-husband's mother. No apology. No acknowledgement of harm caused. Just recognition that I'd succeeded despite their efforts to ensure I wouldn't. I deleted it without responding. She didn't deserve my words. The award in my hotel room, the respect from my peers, the life I'd built, those were my responses. Living well wasn't just the best revenge. It was the only response that mattered. Rochelle found me outside. You okay? Better than okay. I was just thinking about how far I've come. How different everything is now. You earned all of it. Every bit. I know. That's what makes it feel so good. No one gave me this. No one helped me as a favor. I built it with my own hands, my own mind, my own determination. We went back inside. Stayed until the reception ended. Then returned to the hotel where we ordered room service and watched the ceremony replay on the foundation's website. Seeing myself accept that award, hearing my speech again, I barely recognized the confident woman on screen. But she was me. The me I'd become by refusing to stay small. By choosing growth over bitterness. By focusing on building something real instead of dwelling on what had been taken. Sunday morning, news outlets had picked up the story. Rising star in tech honored for innovation. Articles highlighting my work, my background, my rapid rise. The documentary was mentioned, providing context. My journey from setback to success framed as inspiration. I checked social media briefly. Comments from people I'd never met. She's amazing. This is what resilience looks like. Her ex-husband must be kicking himself. That last one made me smile despite myself. Not because I cared about his regrets, but because strangers understood what had happened without me having to explain. The Bennetts were frozen in their narrative. The one where I was supposed to fail, supposed to crumble, supposed to validate their decision to discard me. But reality had written a different story. One where I succeeded specifically because I'd been freed from their limitations. Flying home Sunday afternoon, I looked out at clouds stretching endlessly. My career was ascending. My life was full of purpose. My future was bright with possibilities I was creating myself. The award sat carefully packed in my bag. Tangible proof of achievement. But the real proof was intangible. Confidence. Self-knowledge. Unshakable certainty of my own worth. They'd wanted to see me broken. Instead, the world had seen me honored. Not in spite of what happened, but because of what I'd built afterward. That distinction mattered. I wasn't successful despite them. I was successful because I'd chosen myself when they'd rejected me. The plane touched down as sun set over the city. My city now. My life. My story. And it was only getting better. The best chapters were still ahead. I could feel them building. Momentum carrying me toward something even bigger than awards and recognition. Toward completeness. Toward peace. Toward the person I'd always been meant to become. Uninterrupted by people who couldn't see my value. Undiminished by those who tried to make me small. Just me, fully realized, absolutely certain, finally home in myself. And that was worth more than any award. More than any ceremony. More than any recognition. It was worth everything. Because it was mine. Truly, completely, unchangeably mine. The charity gala wasn't optional. Sterling was a major sponsor, and as Innovation Division head, I was expected to attend. Black tie event at a downtown hotel, supporting technology education for underserved communities. Worthy cause. Uncomfortable evening. I wore a dress in deep blue, borrowed Rochelle's confidence since my own felt shaky. These events still made me nervous. Too many people, too much small talk, too many opportunities to say the wrong thing. But I was good at my job. That had to be enough. The ballroom was elegant. Crystal chandeliers, circular tables with elaborate centerpieces. A stage where speakers would make presentations throughout the evening. I found Sterling's table, made polite conversation with colleagues and their spouses. Checked my watch repeatedly. How long until I could reasonably leave? Then I saw them. Across the room near the entrance. My ex-husband and his mother. Both dressed formally, scanning the crowd with the desperate energy of people trying to seem important. They didn't belong here. Not anymore. Their company's declining status meant invitations like this had dried up. They must have bought tickets themselves. Hoping to network their way back into relevance. My stomach tightened. I hadn't seen them in person since the divorce dinner. 2 years felt simultaneously like forever and yesterday. They looked older. Tired. The confidence they'd worn like armor had tarnished into something more fragile. His mother spotted me first. I watched recognition cross her face, followed by calculation. She said something to her son. He turned, saw me, froze. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the crowded room. I could leave. Make an excuse, get out before interaction became inevitable. But something stopped me. I'd spent 2 years rebuilding. I'd earned my place here. Why should I run? Instead, I turned back to my table conversation, laughed at a colleague's story, sipped my wine, pretended I hadn't noticed them, let them decide whether to approach, let them carry the weight of that choice. Dinner was served. Between courses, I excused myself to use the restroom. In the hallway, quieter but still elegant, I checked my phone. Found it difficult to focus on messages. My awareness was split, part of me waiting for confrontation I both dreaded and needed. Taylor. His voice behind me. I'd recognize it anywhere despite the time passed. I turned slowly, composed my expression into polite neutrality. Hello. I didn't use his name. Didn't acknowledge our history. Just basic acknowledgement of his existence. You look wonderful. Really successful. I saw the award ceremony. Congratulations. Thank you. Listen, I wanted to say. He trailed off, seeming unsure how to continue. His mother appeared beside him, face tight with something between anger and fear. We need to talk, she said. No greeting. No preamble. You've done very well for yourself. We're happy for you. The lie was transparent. They weren't happy. They were desperate. I could see it in how they stood too close, invaded my space, tried to establish some claim on my attention. There's nothing to talk about, I said calmly. Our business is concluded. But we're family, my ex-husband tried. Or we were. That has to count for something. Does it? Because I recall very clearly being told I wasn't family. That I'd overstayed my welcome. That I needed to leave with nothing and be grateful you were letting me go at all. His mother flinched. That was a difficult time. Emotions were high. We said things we didn't mean. You meant them. You filmed my reaction for entertainment. You wanted to watch me suffer. So I'm not interested in revisiting any definition of family that includes you. Taylor, please. His voice held something close to pleading. Things have been hard. The business is struggling. We thought maybe you could help. Put in a good word somewhere. Use your connections. You're so successful now. You could easily. No. The word came out flat, final. You don't get to dismiss me when I had nothing, then ask for help when I've built something. That's not how this works. We made mistakes, his mother admitted. The word seemed to cost her something. We underestimated you. We see that now. But surely you're not so cold that you'd ignore people who need help. I looked at her carefully. Really saw her. The desperation poorly hidden. The ego still intact enough to frame her request as my obligation. The complete lack of genuine remorse. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry it had consequences. I'm not cold, I said quietly. I'm just no longer willing to set myself on fire to keep people warm. Especially people who wouldn't cross the street to help me when I needed it. You made your choices. I made mine. Now we both live with the results. So that's it, my ex-husband said. Anger creeping into his tone now. You're just going to pretend we meant nothing? That years of marriage don't matter? Our marriage ended when you handed me divorce papers at my graduation dinner. You ended it. Publicly. Cruelly. I simply accepted the terms you offered. And built a life without you. That's not punishment. That's just consequence. We're not asking for money, his mother said quickly. Just a recommendation. An introduction. Surely that's not too much to ask. It is. Because my reputation matters. I won't risk it on people who've proven they can't be trusted. Who've shown they'll discard others when convenient. Why would any colleague respect my judgment if I recommended you? The truth of that hung in the air. They had nothing to offer. No value to trade. No leverage to use. Just need, presented as if it created obligation. But I owed them nothing. Less than nothing. And we all knew it. This isn't who you are, my ex-husband tried. You're kind. Generous. You wouldn't just leave people struggling. You're right. I do help people. I mentor younger colleagues. Donate to causes I believe in. Support friends when they need it. But you're not my people. You made that clear. I'm simply respecting the boundaries you established. A couple passed us in the hallway, glancing curiously at our tense conversation. I smiled politely at them, waited until they'd passed. When I looked back at the Bennetts, I saw something in their faces I'd never seen before. Defeat. Complete understanding that I meant what I said. That no argument would change my mind. I need to get back to my table, I said. Moved to step around them. My ex-husband caught my arm. Not hard. Just enough to stop me. Taylor, please, just consider it. I looked down at his hand on my arm. Then up at his face. Held his gaze until he released me. No. And don't contact me again. Not through mutual friends. Not through messages. Not ever. We're done. We've been done. Accept it and move on. I walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't rush. Just returned to my table with measured steps and rejoined the conversation. My hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline, probably. But I felt clear-headed. Certain. I'd said what needed saying. Set boundaries that required no further defense. Through the rest of the evening, I stayed aware of where they were in the room. They didn't approach again. Didn't try to corner me during networking breaks. Just watched from a distance, probably debating whether to try once more. They never did. Maybe they finally understood that door was permanently closed. Toward the end of the night, I noticed them leaving early, slipping out without the drawn-out goodbyes that networking events usually required. They looked smaller somehow, diminished, not because I'd done anything to them but because reality had caught up with their choices. Rochelle texted near midnight. How was the gala? Interesting. Ran into the Bennetts. No. What happened? They asked for help. I said no. It's done. How do you feel? I thought about it. Checked inside myself for guilt, doubt, any wavering in my decision. Found only clarity. Peaceful. Like I finally closed a door that should have been shut a long time ago. You did the right thing. I know. Leaving the hotel, waiting for my car, I looked up at the night sky. Stars were faint but visible despite city lights. I thought about trajectories again. Paths that diverge and never reconnect. That's what this was. We'd split apart that night 2 years ago. Everything since had been confirmation of that split. Not reconciliation. Not reunion. Just two separate paths going different directions. There's downward, consequences of their choices compounding. Mine upward, rewards of my efforts accumulating. Not because I'd wished them harm. Just because actions have results. They'd acted with cruelty. I'd acted with determination. Now we each lived in the worlds we'd created. I didn't feel victorious. Didn't feel vengeful. Didn't feel much of anything toward them except distant neutrality. They'd become strangers. People I once knew but no longer had connection to. Their struggles weren't my responsibility. Their mistakes weren't mine to fix. Our intersection had ended. Completely, permanently, finally. And that felt exactly right. No loose ends. No lingering obligations. No what-ifs or maybes. Just clean separation and the freedom to move forward without looking back. They were my past. I was my future. And those two things had nothing to do with each other anymore. The car arrived. I gave the driver my address. Settled into the back seat. Through tinted windows, the city passed by in streaks of light. My city. My life. My story continuing without them in it. As it should be. As it needed to be. As I'd earned it to be. They'd frozen that night at the ceremony when my name was called. Realized what they'd lost, what they'd underestimated, what they'd foolishly discarded. But that realization changed nothing. Made nothing possible. Because I'd moved beyond their reach entirely. Built something they couldn't touch, diminish, or claim any part of. That was the truest ending possible. Not dramatic. Not confrontational. Just clear, calm, absolute closure. They'd asked. I'd declined. We'd both walked away. And that was that. The job offer came in June. Chief Innovation Officer at Hartwell Industries. Fortune 500 company, global presence, resources that made Sterling look modest. Salary that made my current excellent compensation seem quaint. Equity package that could set me up for life. The kind of opportunity people spent careers hoping to see. I sat with the offer letter for a week. Read it repeatedly. Ran the numbers. Weighed the options. This wasn't about whether I could do the job. I knew I could. This was about whether I wanted to. Sterling had been good to me. Adrienne had taken a chance, provided mentorship, created space for me to grow. Leaving felt like betrayal. But staying out of loyalty rather than vision felt like settling. And I'd promised myself I'd never settle again. I scheduled a meeting with Adrienne. Brought the offer letter. Laid it out honestly. Hartwell wants me. I need your advice. She read the offer carefully. Smiled. You should take it. Just like that? No counteroffer? No attempt to keep me? Taylor, this is exactly what I hoped would happen when I hired you. That you'd grow beyond what we could offer. That bigger opportunities would see your value. I'm not going to hold you back out of selfishness. You've earned this. Take it. I feel like I'm abandoning you. You're advancing. That's different. And honestly, watching you succeed is one of my proudest professional achievements. I saw potential. I invested in it. Now that investment is paying dividends not just for Sterling but for you. That's how it should work. I accepted the position. Gave Sterling a generous notice period to ensure smooth transition. Spent weeks documenting my work, training my replacement, making sure nothing would fall through cracks. Professional to the end. The announcement hit industry news. Taylor Bennett named CIO at Hartwell Industries. Articles about my rapid rise. Profiles discussing my approach to innovation. Speculation about what my appointment signaled for Hartwell's strategic direction. I was news. Actual news. Not human interest. Not feel-good diversity story. Legitimate industry news because my work mattered. I found a house. Real house, not apartment. 3 bedrooms in a neighborhood with trees and quiet streets. Space for a home office. Yard for a garden I'd learned to maintain. Garage for the car I'd finally bought after years of using public transit. Evidence of permanence. Of putting down roots. Of building a life I intended to keep. Rochelle helped me move in. Her husband assembled furniture while she and I unpacked boxes. Her kids ran through empty rooms, claiming which bedroom would be theirs when they visited. Family. The chosen kind. The kind that matters. Look at you, Rochelle said, standing in my living room. Homeowner. Executive. Successful beyond anything we imagined in college. Beyond anything I imagined 2 years ago. Do you ever think about them? About what they're doing now? No. I genuinely don't. They're irrelevant to my life. Whatever they're dealing with, it has nothing to do with me. That's growth. Real growth. That evening after everyone left, I sat in my new living room. Unpacked boxes surrounded me. Furniture still needed arranging. Pictures still needed hanging. But it was mine. Every inch of it. Bought with money I'd earned. Chosen to reflect tastes I'd developed. Uncompromised by anyone else's preferences or judgments. My phone buzzed. Email from an unknown address. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Letter from a law firm representing the Bennett family business. They were closing operations. Filing bankruptcy. The letter included a request for me to consider purchasing certain assets at reduced price. Help them salvage something from the collapse. I deleted it. Didn't even consider responding. Their crisis wasn't my problem. Their failure wasn't my responsibility to prevent. They'd made choices. Now they lived with results. Same as everyone else. But another email arrived an hour later. This one personal. From my ex-husband directly. Long, rambling, full of justifications and regrets and barely veiled requests for help. He explained how hard things had become. How much he regretted his choices. How he'd always known I was special but hadn't appreciated it properly. How he hoped I could find it in my heart to consider helping family in crisis. I read it once. Just once. Then filed it in a folder I'd never look at again. Didn't respond. Didn't acknowledge. Just archived it as historical document. Evidence of who he'd become. Who he'd always been really. Someone who only valued me when he needed something. They'd expected me to fail. Planned for me to fail. Celebrated what they thought was my failure. Now, facing their own decline, they expected me to save them. As if success created obligation to rescue those who'd hoped for my destruction. The logic was almost funny. If it weren't so pathetic. I thought about responding. Explaining why I wouldn't help. But words would be wasted. They'd never understand. Never accept that consequences were theirs to bear alone. So I gave them the same thing I'd given them for 2 years. Silence. Complete, absolute, permanent silence. That weekend, Rochelle came over with champagne. Housewarming. Job celebration. Life appreciation. All of it. We sat on my back porch, watching sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. She poured 2 glasses. Raised hers in toast. To Taylor. Who proved everyone wrong. Who built something beautiful from nothing. Who knew her worth even when others didn't. To new beginnings, I countered. And to friends who stand by you. We drank. The champagne was good. Expensive. The kind I could afford now without thinking twice. Small luxury that represented bigger changes. I'd gone from signing away everything to having everything I needed. From humiliation to honor. From dismissed to indispensable. You happy? Rochelle asked. I thought about it seriously. Checked inside myself with real honesty. Was I happy? Not just successful. Not just stable. Actually happy. Yes, I really am. Not because I proved anyone wrong. Not because they're struggling while I'm succeeding. Just because I built a life that fits who I actually am. No compromises. No pretending to be smaller than I am. No accepting less than I deserve. This life is mine. That makes me happy. That's all anyone can ask for. Authentic happiness. Earned, not given. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled. Fireflies appeared in the yard. Neighbors' lights came on in windows nearby. Normal evening in a normal neighborhood where I'd built an abnormal life. One most people would envy if they knew the full story. If they understood how far I'd come and what I'd overcome. The divorce papers had been meant as ending. Final statement of my inadequacy. Proof I'd never been good enough for them. But they'd been beginning instead. Start of discovering who I was without their limitations. Without their doubts. Without their need to keep me small so they could feel large. I'd won. Not the way they thought winning looked. Not by destroying them or taking revenge or proving anything to them specifically. I'd won by becoming myself. Fully, unapologetically, successfully myself. By building career and life and happiness that existed completely independent of their opinions. By making their judgments irrelevant through sheer force of my own achievement. They'd thought they were cutting me loose. Instead they'd cut me free. Freed me from obligation to make them comfortable. Freed me from pretending their approval mattered. Freed me from accepting their vision of who I should be. That freedom had been the greatest gift possible. Even if they hadn't meant it as one. My phone stayed silent that night. No more emails from desperate ex-husbands. No more requests from his mother. They'd finally understood what I'd been saying all along. That door was closed. Locked. With no key left behind. They were my past. Definitively, absolutely, permanently my past. And I was my future. Monday morning I started at Hartwell. New office bigger than my last. Windows overlooking the city. Nameplate on the door that read Chief Innovation Officer. Team of 30 brilliant people who'd be looking to me for leadership and vision. Responsibility that would have terrified younger me. Current me felt ready. First day included meetings with executives. Strategy sessions about direction and priorities. Introductions to people who'd become colleagues and collaborators. Everyone treated me with respect earned through reputation. They knew my work. Valued my perspective. Wanted my input. Not because they felt obligated. Because they genuinely believed I belonged here. That night, exhausted but satisfied, I drove home to my house. Cooked simple dinner. Ate at the table I'd chosen. Washed dishes in the sink I'd installed. Small domestic moments that felt profound because they were completely, entirely, absolutely mine. I thought about the woman who'd signed divorce papers 2 years ago. Her hands shaking. Her world collapsing. Her future seeming impossible. If I could talk to her, what would I say? That it gets better? That seemed insufficient. Too simple for the complexity of the journey. Maybe I'd say this: you're stronger than you know. Braver than you believe. Capable of more than anyone has told you. The pain you're feeling now is necessary. It's burning away everything that isn't really you. What remains will be solid. Unshakable. Yours. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Keep moving forward. Don't look back. What's ahead is better than anything you're leaving behind. She wouldn't have believed me. But she'd have been wrong. Because everything I'd have told her turned out true. The struggle made me stronger. The isolation made me self-sufficient. The dismissal made me determined to prove my worth. Not to them. To myself. For myself. By myself. That was the truest victory. Not defeating anyone. Not getting revenge. Not even succeeding publicly enough that they'd see and regret. Just becoming someone I was genuinely proud to be. Someone who valued herself properly. Someone who demanded respect because she'd earned it and knew it. Someone complete without validation from people who'd never understood her value anyway. I fell asleep that night in my own house, in my own bed, in my own life. No one could take this from me. No one could diminish it. No one could claim credit or cast shadows. It was mine. Built by me. Earned through me. Sustained by me. Mine. And that was everything. That was enough. That was victory. Pure, complete, absolute victory. The kind that doesn't need witnesses or acknowledgement. Because I knew. I lived it. I felt it in every moment of every day. I'd won by becoming myself. And nothing else mattered beyond that simple, profound, life-changing truth.
Ryan Dalton stood in the doorway of the house he'd shared with his wife Claire for 7 years. His arms crossed over his chest as he watched her struggle to carry their 3-week-old daughter through the December blizzard, her overweight frame shaking in the bitter cold. The joint bank account he drained that morning, every last cent of their savings, now sat safely transferred to his name only, ready to fund his wedding to Vanessa next month. The woman who just spat in Claire's face and called her a fat, worthless cow, while Ryan laughed. Claire clutched baby Emma tighter, her worn coat doing little against the snow that had just inherited a billion-dollar empire in her name. A secret letter from her late grandmother's attorney that had arrived that very morning. sitting unopened on the kitchen counter because Ryan had kicked her out before she could read it. But what would Ryan discover when he opened that invitation to his own wedding reception 6 weeks later? What would happen when the woman he'd thrown into the snow with her newborn appeared at his wedding to Vanessa, transformed, powerful, and ready to deliver a shock that would shatter both their lives forever? Would the mistress who spat on her still be smiling when she learned the truth about the empire Claire had just inherited? And what revenge had the discarded wife been planning in those 6 weeks that would make Ryan wish he'd never laid eyes on Vanessa? Claire's hands trembled as she held 3-week-old Emma against her chest, trying to shield the baby from the December wind that cut through her thin coat like knives. Behind her, the front door of the modest 2-story house slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the quiet suburban street. She heard Ryan's voice through the wood, already on the phone with Vanessa, his tone light and excited, discussing wedding venues as if he hadn't just thrown his wife and newborn daughter out into a blizzard. She remembered when they'd bought this house 5 years ago. Ryan had carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing, young and hopeful. She'd been slimmer then, before the years of emotional eating had added the weight that Ryan now used as ammunition for his cruelty. Before the pregnancy that had added even more pounds. Pounds that hadn't had time to come off before Ryan had started bringing Vanessa around, introducing her as his colleague from the marketing firm. The snow was falling harder now, coating Claire's dark hair with white flakes. Emma stirred against her chest, making small sounds of distress. Claire adjusted the blanket around her daughter with numb fingers, her mind still reeling from the events of the past hour. It had started that morning when Ryan had come down to breakfast with divorce papers in hand. No warning, no conversation, just papers slapped on the kitchen table next to her oatmeal. Claire had stared at them in shock, Emma crying in her bassinet nearby, and when she'd looked up at Ryan with questions forming on her lips, Vanessa had walked out of the bedroom upstairs wearing Ryan's shirt. The humiliation had burned through Claire like acid. 7 years of marriage, 3 weeks since giving birth to his daughter, and he'd already moved his mistress into their home. But the worst had come when Claire tried to speak, tried to understand what was happening, and Vanessa had walked right up to her and spat in her face. Ryan had laughed. That sound would haunt Claire forever. Her husband's laughter as another woman's spit dripped down her cheek while she held their infant daughter. Claire had stumbled back, wiping her face with shaking hands, and that's when Ryan had told her about the bank account, their joint savings account, the one that held $15,000 they'd been saving for Emma's future, for emergencies, for their life together. He'd transferred every cent into his personal account that morning at 6 a.m., before the banks had even opened properly, using the online access they both had. The memory of checking her phone and seeing the zero balance made Claire's stomach clench even now. Standing in the snow, she'd been left with nothing. No money, no access to their funds, and a newborn who needed diapers and formula. When she'd protested, when she'd begged Ryan to at least leave her something for the baby, Vanessa had laughed and told her to go cry to your mommy. But Claire's mother had died 3 years ago, and her father had passed when she was 12. Her grandmother, the only family she had left, had died 6 months ago, leaving Claire even more alone in a world that suddenly felt hostile and cold. Ryan had given her 30 minutes to pack a bag, 30 minutes to gather clothes for herself and Emma, to grab what she could carry, while Vanessa had followed her from room to room, making comments about Claire's weight, about how no man would ever want her now, about how she was doing Claire a favor by taking Ryan off her hands. Claire shifted Emma's weight, her arms aching. The baby was small, only 7 pounds at birth, but carrying her in the single duffel bag she'd managed to pack felt like carrying the world. Her car was gone too. Ryan had taken her keys, claiming the car was in his name, even though they'd bought it together. When she'd reached for her phone to call an Uber, she discovered Ryan had canceled their family phone plan. Her phone was just dead weight in her pocket now. A car drove past, its headlights cutting through the falling snow, and didn't stop. Claire started walking, her feet already numb in her worn boots. She had nowhere to go. Her few friends from college had drifted away over the years, partly because Ryan had never liked when she went out without him, and partly because Claire had been too ashamed of her weight gain to maintain those friendships. She thought of her grandmother then, of Eleanor Morrison, the sharp-eyed woman who'd raised Claire after her father died. Eleanor had been wealthy once, Claire remembered, back before some family tragedy that was never fully explained. She'd lived simply in Claire's childhood, in a small apartment in Queens, but there had been hints of a grander past. Photos in silver frames of Eleanor at galas, wearing designer gowns. Stories about Europe, about businesses and boardrooms. Eleanor had died suddenly 6 months ago, a heart attack that took her before Claire could say goodbye. The funeral had been simple, and Claire had been 6 months pregnant, grieving alone because Ryan had claimed he had to work and couldn't take time off. She'd sat in that funeral home, her hands on her swollen belly, and wished her grandmother could have met Emma. There had been mention of a will, Claire remembered now through the haze of cold and exhaustion. An attorney had sent a letter, but it had arrived during those chaotic first weeks after Emma's birth, and Claire had set it aside, meaning to open it when she had the energy. It was probably still sitting on the kitchen counter in the house she no longer had access to. Emma cried louder, her small face scrunching up in distress. Claire ducked under the awning of a closed bookstore, trying to shield them both from the worst of the wind. She opened her coat and pulled Emma inside against her body heat, wrapping them both as tightly as she could. Her phone buzzed, one last gasp of battery life, a text message from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, Claire opened it. It was a photo, Ryan and Vanessa kissing in Claire's kitchen, Vanessa's hand showing off an engagement ring. The message below read, "Thanks for the wedding fun, fatty. Enjoy the streets." Claire closed her eyes, feeling tears freeze on her cheeks. But beneath the devastation, beneath the humiliation and fear, something else stirred. Something hard and cold that matched the winter air around her. Ryan had taken everything from her. He'd stolen her money, her home, her dignity. He'd laughed while his mistress spat on her. He'd thrown her out into a blizzard with their 3-week-old daughter. But he'd forgotten one thing. Claire Morrison Dalton wasn't just Ryan's fat wife. She wasn't just the woman he'd discarded. She was Eleanor Morrison's granddaughter. And Eleanor Morrison had never raised a quitter. Her phone died completely, the screen going black. Claire held Emma close and started walking again. There was a women's shelter 3 miles away. She'd seen signs for it before. 3 miles in a blizzard with a newborn seemed impossible. But Claire was learning that impossible was just another word for the only option left. Behind her, in the house with its warm lights and stolen comfort, Ryan was probably already planning his wedding to Vanessa. Planning how they'd spend Claire's money, how they'd live in Claire's house, how they'd build their life on the ruins of what they'd destroyed. Let them plan, Claire thought, her jaw setting with determination despite the cold that was seeping into her bones. Let them celebrate and laugh and think they'd won. Because somewhere in the back of her mind, Claire remembered Eleanor's favorite saying, repeated over and over during Claire's childhood, "The Morrison women don't break. We wait, we watch, and we win." Claire didn't know what winning would look like yet, but as she walked through the snow with Emma breathing softly against her chest, she made herself a promise. Ryan and Vanessa would regret this day. They would regret every laugh, every cruelty, every moment they thought they destroyed her. She just had to survive this night first. One step at a time through the snow, holding her daughter close, Claire Morrison Dalton walked toward whatever future awaited her. And though she didn't know it yet, that letter sitting unopened on her kitchen counter was about to change everything. Ryan Dalton woke up the morning after kicking Claire out with a sense of satisfaction spreading through his chest like warmth. Vanessa was still asleep beside him, her blonde hair spread across the pillow that used to be Claire's, her body taking up the space his wife had occupied for 7 years. He stretched, careful not to wake her, and padded downstairs to make coffee. The house felt different without Claire's presence, lighter somehow. No more sad looks from across the room. No more awkward silence when Vanessa came by. No more excuses about why he needed to work late or take weekend trips with his colleague. Everything was out in the open now, clean and simple. He'd meant to do it months ago, really. The attraction to Vanessa had started a year back when she joined his marketing firm as a junior associate. 26 years old, fresh and exciting, she'd made 33-year-old Ryan feel young again, made him remember who he'd been before marriage had tied him down, before Claire had let herself go and become the overweight, tired woman who'd greeted him every evening. The pregnancy had been the final straw. Claire had gained 60 pounds carrying Emma, and after the birth, she'd looked even worse. Stretch marks, exhaustion, constantly covered in spit up and looking perpetually disheveled. Vanessa, by contrast, was immaculate. Always perfectly made up, always dressed well, always ready for adventure. Ryan poured his coffee and opened his banking app, looking at the balance with satisfaction. $15,000, all his now. Vanessa had expensive tastes, and the wedding she wanted wasn't cheap. Claire would have argued about spending that much. She'd always been too practical, too cautious. But Vanessa understood that life was meant to be lived, that experiences mattered more than savings accounts. He heard a rustle and looked up to see Vanessa descending the stairs, wearing one of his t-shirts and looking like something from a magazine. She smiled at him, that dazzling smile that had first caught his attention, and crossed the kitchen to kiss him. "Good morning, future husband," she purred, taking his coffee cup and drinking from it. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years," Ryan admitted. It was true. No crying baby, no Claire sighing and shifting beside him all night. Just Vanessa, soft and warm and uncomplicated. Vanessa set down the coffee and wrapped her arms around his waist. "I've been thinking about the wedding. The Riverside Plaza Ballroom is available in 6 weeks. It's expensive, but it's stunning. Huge windows overlooking the water, capacity for 200 guests. 200? Ryan raised his eyebrows. That's a lot. "It's our special day," Vanessa said, pouting slightly. "Don't you want everyone to see how happy we are? Don't you want to celebrate?" Ryan thought about the $15,000. It would cover most of the venue and catering, but not much else. Still, he could put some on credit cards, maybe take a personal loan. His salary was decent, and without Claire's expenses to worry about, he'd have more flexibility. "Okay," he said, kissing her forehead. "The Riverside Plaza it is." Vanessa squealed and hugged him tighter. "I love you so much. You're nothing like my ex. He was so cheap, always worried about money. You understand that life is for living." Ryan felt a swell of pride. He was nothing like Claire either. No longer the boring married man counting pennies and talking about retirement savings. He was starting fresh, and it felt incredible. Later that afternoon, while Vanessa was out shopping for wedding magazines, Ryan was cleaning up the kitchen when he noticed a letter on the counter. It was addressed to Claire Morrison Dalton with a law firm's return address, Peterson, Harrison Associates, attorneys at law. The postmark was from 2 weeks ago. Curious, Ryan opened it. The letter was brief and formal. "Dear Mrs. Dalton, this letter serves as notification that you are the primary beneficiary of the estate of Eleanor Margaret Morrison, deceased. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the distribution of assets and your inheritance. Time-sensitive materials require your immediate attention. Sincerely, Robert Peterson, senior partner." Ryan frowned, reading it again. Eleanor Morrison had been Claire's grandmother, he knew. The old woman had died 6 months ago. Claire had been upset, though Ryan hadn't paid much attention at the time. He'd been busy with Vanessa, and Claire's grandmother had been just another old person dying, as old people did. But primary beneficiary, and estate, and distribution of assets caught his attention. Eleanor had lived simply in some small apartment in Queens. Claire had always said her grandmother didn't have much money, but law firms didn't send formal letters about estates unless there was something worth inheriting. Ryan pulled out his phone and Googled Eleanor Margaret Morrison. The first few results were obituaries and condolences. But then, buried several pages deep, he found something that made his stomach drop. An old news article from 1995, "Morrison heiress walks away from fortune after family tragedy." Ryan clicked on it with trembling hands. The article was brief from a business journal. Eleanor Morrison, 45, sole heir to the Morrison manufacturing fortune valued at approximately $800 million, has reportedly walked away from her inheritance following a series of personal tragedies. Sources close to the family indicate that Morrison, devastated by recent losses, has declined her position on the company board and relinquished active management of her assets to a trust. Morrison Manufacturing, founded in 1932, produces industrial components and has facilities in 7 states. Morrison could not be reached for comment. Ryan read it 3 times, his heart pounding. $800 million in 1995. What would that be worth now, 30 years later? Especially if it had been sitting in a trust, managed by professionals, growing with the market. He searched for more information, his hands shaking. Morrison Manufacturing was still operational, now a subsidiary of a larger corporation. The trust that Eleanor had established, he found mentions of it in various business filings, but no clear numbers on its current value. His phone rang. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, baby," she said brightly. "I found the perfect dress. It's $3,000, but it's a Vera Wang, and I look incredible in it. Can we—" "I need to call you back," Ryan interrupted, his mind racing. "What?" "Ryan, I'm at the boutique right now and—" "Later, Vanessa. Something came up." He hung up before she could protest and immediately dialed the number on the law firm's letterhead. A receptionist answered. "Peterson, Harris & Associates. How may I help you?" "Yes, I'm calling about a letter regarding Eleanor Morrison's estate. My name is Ryan Dalton, and—" "Are you Claire Morrison Dalton?" the receptionist interrupted. "No, I'm her husband. Well, ex-husband. We just divorced, but—" "I'm sorry, sir, but we can only discuss estate matters with the named beneficiary. If Mrs. Dalton wishes to speak with us, she can call directly. But I need to know about the inheritance. How much—" "Sir, I cannot discuss confidential client information with anyone except Mrs. Dalton herself. Have a good day." The line went dead. Ryan stared at his phone, his mind whirling. He'd just thrown Claire out. He'd stolen their joint savings. He'd divorced her and humiliated her and left her with nothing. And she was about to inherit a fortune that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "No," he said aloud to the empty kitchen. "No, no, no." But even as denial flooded through him, he knew the truth. Claire hadn't known. That letter had been sitting on the counter unopened. She'd walked out into that blizzard yesterday with no idea that she was one of the wealthiest women in America, and he'd just made himself her enemy. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of wedding preparations that felt increasingly hollow to Ryan, though he couldn't admit this to Vanessa. She was in her element, choosing flowers and table settings and designing invitations with a graphic designer who cost more per hour than Ryan had expected. The credit cards were piling up with debt, but Vanessa waved away his concerns. "It's our special day," she kept saying. "You can't put a price on happiness." But Ryan couldn't stop thinking about that letter, about the Morrison fortune that Claire now presumably knew about. He'd tried calling the attorney's office 3 more times and had been rebuffed each time. He'd attempted to find Claire, but she seemed to have vanished completely. No social media updates, no trace of her at the women's shelter he'd checked, no forwarding address. He'd even driven by the house where Claire's grandmother had lived, but it was empty, already sold according to the building super. When Ryan had pressed for information about where Eleanor's things had gone, the super had shrugged and said, "Some law firm handled it all. Professional movers came and cleaned everything out in one day. Must have been important to be done that fast." Vanessa noticed his distraction, but misinterpreted it as pre-wedding jitters. She doubled down on the planning, adding more expensive details to their day. A champagne fountain, a live band instead of a DJ, designer party favors for their 200 guests. Each addition made Ryan's chest tighten with anxiety. He'd borrowed $20,000 from his parents, claiming it was for a down payment on a new car. He'd maxed out 2 credit cards. The $15,000 he'd taken from Claire was long gone, consumed by deposits and down payments. And still, Vanessa wanted more. "My sister's wedding was beautiful," she said one evening as they reviewed the seating chart in what used to be Ryan and Claire's bedroom. "But ours is going to be legendary. Everyone's going to be talking about it for years." Ryan forced a smile, but inside he was calculating. His debt was now approaching $50,000. His credit score was plummeting. And somewhere out there, Claire was sitting on a potential fortune that made his problems look microscopic. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd left Claire partly because he'd thought she was holding him back financially with her practical, careful approach to money. He'd thought Vanessa's boldness and ambition would lead to a better life. Instead, He was drowning in debt while his ex-wife was probably signing papers that made her wealthier than he could imagine. 3 weeks before the wedding, Vanessa came home with an idea that made Ryan's blood run cold. "I was thinking," she said, dropping shopping bags on the couch, "we should invite Claire to the wedding." Ryan looked up from his laptop where he'd been researching bankruptcy options. "What? Claire, your ex-wife. We should send her an invitation." Vanessa's eyes gleamed with something that made Ryan uncomfortable. "I want her to see us together, to see what she lost. I want her to watch us celebrate while she's probably living in some dumpy apartment with that baby. It would be the ultimate victory." "Vanessa, I don't think—" "Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're still protective of her feelings. She needs to see that we won, Ryan. She needs to see that taking you from her was the best thing that ever happened to us." Vanessa pulled out her phone. "Do you have her contact information? Or should I send it to her grandmother's old address?" Ryan's mind raced. Part of him wanted to refuse, to keep Claire as far from this wedding as possible. But another part, the part that had been panicking for 6 weeks about money, saw an opportunity. If Claire came to the wedding, he might be able to talk to her. To apologize, maybe. To explain that the divorce had been a mistake. To somehow get back into her good graces before she realized her full financial situation. It was manipulation, pure and simple. But Ryan was desperate. "I'll handle it," he said. "I'll send her an invitation." Vanessa clapped her hands together, delighted. "Perfect. I can't wait to see her face when she walks in and sees everything we've built together." "God, Ryan, this is going to be so satisfying." Ryan nodded, already composing the message in his mind. He'd make it seem friendly, apologetic even. He'd suggest that despite everything, they should remain civil for Emma's sake. He'd set the hook carefully, hoping that Claire still had enough feelings for him, enough vulnerability, that she'd take the bait. He sent the invitation through a mutual acquaintance from his office, someone who owed him a favor. The message was carefully worded. "Claire, I know things ended badly between us, but I hope we can be mature about this situation. Vanessa and I are getting married, and for Emma's sake, I think it would be good if we could all move forward peacefully. I'd like to invite you to our wedding as a gesture of goodwill. It would mean a lot to both of us if you could come. Please know that I wish you well, and I hope you're doing okay." He didn't mention the money. He didn't mention the letter from the attorney. He kept his tone gentle and conciliatory, the way he used to talk to Claire when they'd first dated, before resentment had poisoned everything between them. 3 days later, he got a response through the same mutual friend. Just 3 words. "I'll be there." Ryan read those words over and over, trying to divine Claire's emotional state from them. Was she hurt, angry, or had she accepted her situation and moved on? He had no way to know, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. Vanessa was thrilled with the confirmation. She actually said yes? "Oh my God, this is perfect. I'm going to make sure we have a photographer capture her reaction when she sees us. This is going to be everything I dreamed of." The wedding day arrived with brilliant sunshine that seemed to mock Ryan's inner turmoil. The Riverside Plaza ballroom was indeed stunning, all floor-to-ceiling windows and elegant decor. Vanessa had spared no expense, and the result was breathtaking. White flowers everywhere, crystal chandeliers, a cake that cost more than Ryan's first car. Guests arrived in expensive clothes, filling the ballroom with laughter and champagne toasts. Vanessa's family was there, beaming with pride at their daughter's good fortune. Ryan's parents sat in the front row, his mother looking slightly concerned at the extravagance, but keeping her thoughts to herself. His father kept checking his watch, as if calculating the debt-per-minute ratio of this event. Ryan stood at the altar in his rented tuxedo. Even that had been expensive, but Vanessa had insisted on a designer, and watched guests file in. Any minute now, Vanessa would walk down the aisle, and he'd commit himself to this new life. A life built on stolen money, maxed credit cards, and the ruins of his first marriage. He glanced at the doors, wondering if Claire would actually show. Part of him hoped she wouldn't, that he could get through this day without having to face what he'd done. But another part desperately needed to see her, to gauge whether there was any chance of salvaging something from the disaster he'd created. The music started. Vanessa appeared at the end of the aisle, resplendent in her $3,000 dress. her smile radiant. Ryan's breath caught, not from love, he realized with sudden clarity, but from panic. This was it. This was the moment that would lock him into this decision forever. Then, just as Vanessa took her first step down the aisle, the ballroom doors opened. Claire Morrison Dalton walked in. But it wasn't the Claire that Ryan had last seen 6 weeks ago. That woman had been broken, overweight, dressed in worn clothes, carrying a crying baby through a blizzard. That woman had been someone he could dismiss, someone he could pity or ridicule or forget. This woman was transformed. Claire had lost at least 40 pounds, her figure now slender and elegant in a designer dress that Ryan recognized as couture even from across the room. Her hair, which had been lank and unwashed when he'd thrown her out, was now styled perfectly, dark and glossy. She wore jewelry that caught the light. Real diamonds, Ryan's mind registered dimly, not the costume pieces she'd worn during their marriage, but it was her face that stopped everyone's breath. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She wasn't showing any emotion at all. She simply stood there, poised and powerful, looking at Ryan and Vanessa with the cool assessment of someone who held all the cards. Behind her, 2 security guards in expensive suits flanked the doorway. And next to Claire stood a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, carrying a briefcase, who Ryan suddenly recognized from the law firm's website. Robert Peterson, senior partner at Peterson, Harris and Associates. The music faltered. Vanessa froze halfway down the aisle, her bouquet trembling in her hands. Every guest turned to stare at Claire, whispers rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Claire took 3 steps into the ballroom, her heels clicking on the marble floor with absolute authority. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the stunned silence, and every word was a hammer blow to Ryan's chest. "Thank you for the invitation, Ryan," Claire said, her tone pleasant and conversational, as if she were commenting on the weather. "I'm so glad you wanted me here to celebrate your special day, because I have some news to share with everyone." She paused, letting the tension build, her eyes never leaving Ryan's face. 6 weeks ago, when you kicked me and our newborn daughter out into a blizzard, when you stole our joint savings to fund this wedding, when your fiancé spat in my face while you laughed, I was actually on the verge of reading a very important letter. Robert Peterson stepped forward, opening his briefcase with practiced precision. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of legal authority, "I am here to inform you that Mrs. Claire Morrison Dalton is the sole heir to the Morrison Manufacturing Trust, established by her late grandmother, Eleanor Morrison. The current value of this trust, including all assets, properties, and controlling shares, has been assessed at $2.8 billion. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, the sound of Vanessa's bouquet hitting the floor. Ryan felt the blood drain from his face, his vision tunneling. 2.8 billion, not millions, billions. Claire smiled then, and it was the most terrifying expression Ryan had ever seen. "The letter you left sitting on the counter, Ryan, the one you opened after you threw me out, that was the attorney's office trying to reach me about my inheritance. When I finally made it to a shelter with Emma, when I finally had access to a phone again, I called them. And do you know what Mr. Peterson told me?" She took another step forward, and the crowd parted before her like she was royalty. "He told me that my grandmother had been waiting until I had a child to release the full inheritance to me. She wanted to make sure the Morrison money would go to someone who understood family, who valued loyalty. And the morning you kicked me out, Ryan, was the morning I became eligible to inherit everything." Ryan tried to speak, but no words came out. Beside him, his best man had taken several steps back, as if trying to disassociate himself from what was happening. "So here's what's going to happen," Claire continued, her voice taking on a harder edge. "Mr. Peterson has already filed several lawsuits on my behalf. One against you, Ryan, for theft of marital assets, that $15,000 you stole. I have records of every cent, and in addition to returning it with interest, you'll be paying substantial punitive damages. Another lawsuit for fraud, since you initiated the divorce without disclosing that you were already cohabitating with Vanessa, which is illegal in this state." Vanessa made a choking sound. Ryan looked at her, saw the horror dawning in her eyes as she realized what this meant. "And Vanessa, Claire said, turning to address the blonde woman directly. You should know that my attorneys have also filed a civil suit against you for assault. Spitting on someone is battery in this state. You'll be hearing from the police shortly. The security guards stepped forward, one of them holding what looked like legal documents. Claire wasn't finished. But more than that, I've spent the last 6 weeks learning about my grandmother's business. Morrison Manufacturing has government contracts, major corporate partnerships, and this morning, I made some calls. Ryan, your marketing firm, the one you're so proud of, your biggest client accounts for 40% of your revenue. I bought that client's company 2 hours ago. You're both fired, effective immediately. Ryan swayed on his feet. His firm couldn't survive losing their biggest client, his salary, his reputation, his career, all gone in a single sentence from the woman he'd discarded. As for this wedding, Claire said, gesturing to the expensive decor, the champagne fountain, the designer cake, I spoke with the venue management this morning. The Riverside Plaza is owned by a subsidiary of Morrison Holdings. I own this building, Ryan, and I've decided to donate the rental fee you paid to a women's shelter that helps mothers and newborns. The same shelter that took me and Emma in 6 weeks ago when you threw us out into the snow. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, showing it to the crowd. On the screen was the photo Vanessa had sent that first night, Ryan and Vanessa kissing in the kitchen, Vanessa flashing her engagement ring, with the cruel message, "Thanks for the wedding fund, fatty. Enjoy the streets." This text was sent to me hours after I gave birth to our daughter and was kicked out of my home, Claire said, her voice finally showing emotion, not pain, but fury. I've had 6 weeks to think about it, 6 weeks to heal, to lose the baby weight, to learn about my inheritance, and to plan exactly how I would respond to your cruelty. She put her phone away and smiled again, that terrible, powerful smile. Congratulations on your wedding day, Ryan and Vanessa. I hope you enjoy explaining to your 200 guests why the ceremony is being canceled, why you've both lost your jobs, and why you'll be spending the next several years in court. I hope the $15,000 you stole from me was worth it. Claire turned to leave, her heels clicking with finality, but she paused at the door, looking back one last time. Oh, and Ryan, you should know that the first thing I did with my inheritance was set up a trust fund for Emma. She'll never want for anything. She'll never be vulnerable the way you tried to make me vulnerable. She'll never need you. With that, Claire Morrison Dalton, billionaire heiress, and the woman Ryan Dalton had laughed at while she walked through a blizzard, walked out of the ballroom, and out of his life forever. Behind her, she left chaos. Vanessa was crying, mascara running down her face. Ryan had collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. Guests were frantically pulling out their phones, texting and calling, spreading the news of the most dramatic wedding interruption in the city's history. And somewhere in the crowd, Ryan's father turned to his mother and said quietly, I think our son just made the biggest mistake of his life. Outside, Claire slid into a black Mercedes where Emma waited with a nanny, sleeping peacefully in her car seat. Claire looked at her daughter, 7 weeks old now, healthy and safe, and felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, but close enough. Mrs. Dalton, her driver said respectfully, where to? Claire thought about the future stretching before her, about the empire she now controlled, the opportunities ahead, the life she could build for herself and Emma. She thought about Ryan and Vanessa, about the karma that had caught up with them in the most spectacular way possible. Home, she said finally, not the house she'd shared with Ryan, which she'd already arranged to sell. Not her grandmother's old apartment, which held too many memories. But a penthouse she'd purchased last week in Manhattan, with views of the city and enough space for Emma to grow up surrounded by love and security. As the Mercedes pulled away from the Riverside Plaza, Claire Morrison Dalton allowed herself a small smile. The fat wife that Ryan had thrown into the snow was gone forever. In her place was a woman who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't anger or vindictiveness, but simply becoming so powerful that those who'd hurt you could never reach you again. And as for what happened next, that was a story for another day.